Yesterday, we talked briefly about the story out of California, Poway, California, about a shooting at a synagogue there, the Shabbat of Poway. It was on the last day of Passover, this past Saturday. One woman killed, Lori Gilbert Kay. And we actually played the clip yesterday of the rabbi of that synagogue named Yisrael Goldstein, who talked about the phone call he got from President Trump, essentially reassuring him that the Trump administration and America cares about the Jewish faith, cares about the Jewish people, cares about the growing anti-Semitism in America. One fact I didn't know yesterday was that the one woman who was killed, Lori Gilbert Kay, was actually killed in that shooting because she jumped in front of the shooter, between the shooter and her rabbi. She was trying to protect her rabbi. Simply breathtaking bravery for a 60-year-old woman. So there was obviously a service for her after her passing, and a lot of commentary about her bravery. But I want to just talk about what the anti-Semitism problem is in America a little more deeply. Again, yesterday I showed you the New York Times had chosen to run an astonishingly anti-Semitic cartoon, for which they have kind of apologized. But there was some commentary I want to share with you. And the reason I'm wanting to talk about today is because anti-Semitism is on the rise in Europe, is on the rise in America, and it is legitimized by one of the two political parties in this country. It is this kind of thinking that ultimately led the world to tolerate and ultimately to suffer from the Holocaust. So let me just tell you a few things about New York Times. Great coverage about the New York Times in terms of the fact that they have been historically anti-Semitic. That cartoon that least pulled it down, apologized, tried to blame it on one guy who didn't run it by anyone, which is dubious. But there was commentary talking about the fact, even going back as far as World War II, the New York Times was not willing to run accurate coverage about the Holocaust, even after it was discovered. Very minimal coverage of the Holocaust. Continuing to this present day, very negative coverage about Israel, always taking the side of Israel's enemies, especially on their editorial pages. This is considered to be one of the premier, at least for left-wing America, premier sources of news, the New York Times, and they have been that level of anti-Semitic against Israel, against the Jewish people for decades. So you would say, well, seems like there would be a lot of American people, a lot of Jewish people in America who would rise up, who would protest the New York Times. Well, indeed, there was a protest against the New York Times in New York City over the weekend after running this, or I guess it was yesterday, after running this horribly anti-Semitic cartoon. And pretty much they gave a protest and no one came. Literally, it was scheduled to be a 3-hour protest outside the New York Times, waving signs, denouncing anti-Semitism, and literally almost no one came. The 3-hour or so hour range they gave of time for the protest didn't even last the whole 3 hours. They cut it off in the middle because people didn't come. Some of the commentary by Dennis Prager was along the lines, and these, what I'm going to speak to you about today, all of you can find yourself at my website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage, under show, go down, list of links, and you can find the links, the stories I'm talking about, especially Dennis Prager's column. He essentially said, Dennis Prager, beside recounting all of the anti-Semitism in the New York Times, he also talked about the idea that for many people in America who are Jewish, their Jewish background is more a matter of ethnicity than rather than it being a matter of their ethics or beliefs. And so there are more people in America of the Jewish heritage, little more sympathetic to the left-wing side, even when the left-wing side is attacking Jewish people and Israel and America. Not a very impressive picture, and actually a dangerous picture for this country. There was great commentary by Alan Dershowitz, who was saying essentially, we're kind of so used to this intolerance of Judaism, and so we are so tolerant of anti-Semitism. He just asked his readers to think about this. If you remember the cartoon that New York Times ran, it had a dog whose face was Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. Dog face of Netanyahu, the Jewish star around his neck as the collar, and dragging President Trump behind him with President Trump wearing in this cartoon a yarmulke and glasses, dark glasses that appeared. Yeah, there it is right there. Thank you very much, the wonderful Matt Stoker, my wonderful producer. It appears, I think they're trying to make Trump blind, as in he's blindly following the lead of Israel and Netanyahu. But Dershowitz's point in a great column today was essentially to say, what if the New York Times ran a similar cartoon, but the dog instead was the face of a Muslim American? A leader of the LGBTQ community, a lesbian or a gay man's well-known face, an African-American's face, or a Hispanic or Mexican-American's face. The rest of the country would have reacted more in a more volatile fashion if the person being depicted as the face of the dog was one of the groups that we are just triggered to instantly be offended if they are ever in the slightest insulted. It was a very, very, very good column that Alan Dershowitz ran. And I got to tell you, at the end of it all, it just, to me, the reason I wanted to raise it again is to say, I do this show to speak up for the extraordinary, unique greatness of America. This country is unparalleled in world history as being the country founded on the commitment of the freedom of the individual, the liberty of the individual, the right of the individual to practice his or her religion and to live in freedom. And anti-Semitism should be despised in this country just as much as we despise white supremacy, black nationalism, or any other ism that targets a group of people because of their background. It should be that ugly, but in many people's view, it is not. And the Democrat Party in this country contributes to that problem in large amounts, in a great deal, because, as just one example, but a very big and prominent example, their own Democrat member of Congress in Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, she has said outrageous, unfounded, horrible things over and over and over. Her anti-Semitism is widely known, widely reported, and the Democrat Party cannot condemn her. Even after one of her most egregious statements, where many people were calling on her to step down out of Congress, to step down, to publicly apologize, the only rebuke the Democrats could even muster up was a very watered down, well, golly gee, we really don't like hate. That's about what it said. Obviously, a little longer than that, but that was the point of it. They could not hone in on and identify anti-Semitism as an evil. The Democrat Party leaders who have the majority in the U.S. Congress and the House could not condemn her anti-Semitism. It's a very bad signal for America. And for people who love this country and want this country to be strong and free, all of us need to find anti-Semitism simply intolerable.